today on Whiskey and Wood. Oh, it's green, and I got a green screen. Can we see it?
Yeah.
We're gonna be going
Wait,
with
can I see the Jameson?
just a label. That's perfect. All right, we're gonna be going with a classic. College kids love it. So do I. Jameson Irish whiskey.
Yeah, I have a little bit of bullet bourbon in
Oh,
here.
bullet. That's the good stuff. So we're
Hi, I'm Paul Grenier. This is Whiskey and Wood, bringing the people, the stories, and the success to you. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and these guys and gals are out to get a piece of it. Why Whiskey and Wood? Why not?
sitting down with Evan Basarab. Say that right? I say that for every episode. Did I say that right?
Yes, sir.
Originally from New England, where we're from, right?
Yeah, originally from the Adirondacks.
Yeah.
And went to college in Killington, Vermont.
Killington.
Yeah.
Now you're residing in Tennessee.
Yeah, just south of Knoxville, where my wife's from, and so that's how I ended up down here.
Yeah.
But lived all over the country. Used to be a locomotive engineer for the railroads, so spent a lot of years out in the Pacific Northwest, and
That's cool.
That's where my wife and I met. Actually, our 10-year anniversary is tomorrow. So
Well, congratulations.
yeah.
That's a feat in itself. So when did we start talking? We started talking what?
Long time ago.
2-3 years ago. I know we talked a lot before you bought a kiln.
Yeah.
And
it's been something I want to do since I got out of college, and then just kind of all the stars aligned, and it really, so we moved here in the spring of 2021, and then I ended up helping. I was kind of between jobs because I left the railroad and I knew I always wanted to do my own thing, and so I ended up helping. There's a local place in Knoxville called Jeffrey's Woodworks, and I helped them slinging lumber for a little bit, and just it opened my eyes to the massive woodworking community. So coming from the Pacific Northwest, where it's crazy out there, the whole farm to table, tree to table thing is big. It's not as big here, but it kind of made it my goal to try and start that. And so like I said, it really opened my eyes to the amount of woodworkers in this area. And so I befriended a local guy. He's about 40 minutes away, and he's got a kiln up in Sevierville in iDRY. And I mean, we're only 40 minutes apart, but it might as well be two, completely different areas. And so I talked with him extensively, and I said, hey, I don't want to step on your toes, but I think there's a real opportunity here in Blount County where I'm at to capture kind of the between here and Georgia and everywhere in between. And so then that's when you and I started talking more, and I got more serious and was crunching numbers. And it was one of those, it's like, if I don't do it now, somebody else is going to.
yeah.
And I'm not gonna lie, it's been a struggle. Like, it hasn't been easy. I'm still, building up, and it, I thought it was gonna take off like wildfire. And what's been happening is, a lot of folks are onesie twosies. They say, hey, I got a couple hundred board feet of this, a couple hundred of that. Can you dry it? And so it's more of a education component of it. And so I tell them, the kiln is around 2,000 board feet. So I need to, put a whole load in there. I'm not just going to dry a couple pieces here and there. So there's that. And so I've been trying to capture folks with bigger volumes to dry.
Yeah.
And a gentleman found me, I forget how, Facebook or something like that. And he's a timber frame builder about an hour and a half south of here. And so he just brought me up a whole kiln load of some hickory and some poplar. So we dried it, super happy with it. Brought me another load, and it's just going to be kind of like
an existing customer.
Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to build, because it's just more efficient that way. When you can put a whole load in, he's already got it stacked, stickered, and ready to go. I just pull it off his tractor or off his trailer, stick it in, hit go.
Yeah.
So, and then what I've also been doing too is just, you and I have talked a lot that where I'm at, it's just kind of a space constraint. So I'm right in the middle of town. I don't have the privilege of being on acreage or a big farm where I can just burn all my scraps. So, as of recent, I just started been like, you know what, I'm just gonna dabble on the firewood side. I don't really want to because it's so labor intensive, but it's a little extra revenue. And so I've been able to get these IBC totes, that hold the 300-gallon tubs, take them out, load it with firewood, put 3 of them in at a time, and cook it for about 3 or 4 days. And so I got a load in there right now that hopefully will be done,
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Yeah, that's a good been talking more with guys about firewood, and you started right at a time like we can all admit it, the economy is not great right now. Like it doesn't take an economist to realize that. But you are still keeping busy. Like you said, you aren't gangbusters yet, but you've learned how to use the kiln. We've had lots of conversations. Now we're starting to get that consistent type of customer coming in, and but it's a lot of education. I talk to guys about that. It's like we're lucky that people
I mean,
understand that wood needs to be dried. And then yeah, you gotta
well, and it's funny too, because it's, I write down the stuff that, I mean, I practically have you guys on the speed dial at this point because I'm on the phone with Brian or you like every week, just questions, being that I am new to it. And it's one thing if you screw up your own wood, but if you have customers' wood, it's like,
yeah,
can't really afford to do that.
yeah,
So I'd rather, a little education goes a long way, and then you can write it down, have it for future reference. But
yeah.
yeah, and it's funny because it was also one of those that um, my main business is the single axle dump truck. And so that's busy the spring, summer, and into the fall a little bit. And so, this was like, okay, well, this will carry me through the fall and the winter time. But now I'm at that kind of a interesting point where both of them aren't like busy enough to carry each other, but they're busy enough where it's like I gotta choose. And so, and just this morning, I'm in a business networking group every Wednesday morning, and I had 2 people, and they'd be like, "Hey, I want a walnut table built." And I'm like, "All right." So they're gonna come and check out. I got about 3,000 board feet of walnut dried right now in the shed, and so yeah, it's a good problem to have, but it's also, just mentally like trying to sort through it all, just being on by myself. So
Yeah.
like to try and find somebody that I can hire that I can trust and have the same work ethic. It's just, one thing at a time. So
Yeah, yeah. I remember we had lots of conversations before you pulled the trigger, and you were in a different space, and then that didn't work out. So you actually had to move the kiln to your house, and kind of been trying to fly under the radar, but it seems like it's all good, and the town doesn't seem to mind. And I'm not going to
yeah,
send
it
the
was
video to them, but yeah, so yeah, tell us about that a little bit.
so yeah, I have a gentleman, he helped me out, kind of get me started, and actually helped me purchase the sawmill. Like I drove up, like I said, this has all been a dream of mine forever, and so it finally worked out. And so to kind of go back in time, I was looking on Facebook last summer, fall at sawmills, because I knew that was the first component of it. Because I mean, you can do the drying component and not have the sawmill, but I'm always of the mindset of go big or go home. Like if you're going to do it right the first time, invest and keep going. Buy once, cry once. So I ended up driving up to New Hampshire, which was convenient to see some family and stuff like that. But it was a beautiful old, the 2006 Wood-Mizer, fully hydraulic, only had 600 hours on it. It was an '06. And so drove all the way up there to get it, brought it home, and just immediately started sawing, and became a pretty good expert on sawing god awful wavy lumber, because there's, like everything, there's a learning curve. So once you dial that in, it's like, all right, then you're rolling. And then the wood drying component. And so that space, fast forward, I had talked with a gentleman, and it was like what was it? I think an 80 by 100 shop with like 30-foot ceilings on 4.5 acres. I mean, it would have been perfect. But I had kind of a moment where I was like, I can't financially do this. And so I just kind of, for lack of a better term, I tucked tail and brought everything home. It was just on the other side of town. Because I'm like, if I move forward with this, it's just, I had the moment where this is a ton of work. I knew it was, but it was way more than I could handle by myself. And then financially, I wasn't going to be able to meet that financial payment every month. So I just had the thought, if I bring it all home, we'll see what happens. So I built the shed, put the kiln in it, and the biggest linchpin right now is just not having the space for the dried lumber, because you can turn it around so quickly in the kiln. It's like, all right, cool. So I built a 16 by 22, mostly to just get the kiln out from under the weather. And now the whole thing is full of lumber. And so it's just, I have it on Facebook. And so I have some repeat customers. And so I would like to get into the lumber marketplace and start wholesaling stuff. But yeah, back to your point of having that space, it would have been perfect, but it just wasn't going to work out. And so I figured if I bring everything home, get it all under one roof, my 2-car garage is my shop, then I can slowly kind of build up from the bottom, start building, generating revenue, and then work into a space like that. And possibly, what's the term, like a kind of like a co-op, like, because there's a cabinet maker I know, there's another guy that builds tables. So it's like, if we can figure out a way like to have a communal space and split the rent, because it's just, there's a lot of folks moving to Knoxville and to Tennessee in general. And so the property prices, everybody thinks, oh, it's cheaper here. It's not. I mean, it's still pretty expensive. So, and then commercial real estate rent even is just, so just one thing at a time. So
I'm a big fan of starting with a lower overhead and like really maybe have some growing, like struggle along a little bit in the space that you have without that. Like once you jump in, you have the sawmill, you have the kiln, you have this giant space. Like for your mental health, struggle in a space where you're like, okay, I gotta build a bigger shed but it takes some pressure off of you and it allows you to build your business in a natural way. And you are starting to get, like you said, you're starting to get repeat customers, you're starting to get larger drying opportunities. And so you are using the marketing program, right? Or did you?
Yeah, so I'm using the Grow program with Facebook and iDRY, and that is, I know I've talked to you a lot about it. It's been good. I mean, without it, I would not be nearly as far ahead. And so, I mean, it's and talking to Paul, or excuse me,
Jim
Parker, at IWF, we talked a lot about it, and it's just, there's trying to capture that audience of, is it available? And so I'm not very tech savvy. So when I first got into it, it's like, oh, great, all these people are messaging me, but some of it's spam, some of it's not. So you waste your time going through, and then you say yes, and you go into this whole long spiel, and then they never get back to you. So it's good and bad, and so what I've realized out of the whole thing is I really need to set up a website and have a landing platform for people to really look at. And then, it's just as doing this, I think the logical next step is to be able to offer at least surface 2 sides lumber, because not everybody has the tools, the bigger tools to be able to surface their own lumber. They just have either hand tools or smaller planers and joiners where they can't handle the wider pieces. So they just need it ready to go to build whatever. So I got started on this whole journey building woodworking, tables, stuff like that. And now that I'm doing the sawing and drying, I've just kind of leaned more. It's more fun for me. And so what I've thought about is like trying to get a dual side joiner planer, one of the Cantechs or something, it's a heavy price tag, but I think that would be kind of an avenue to selling more. And then with that, you can also take photos of it, put it on a website, offer shipping, this, that, and the other thing, and start moving your product that way. So
Yeah, the hardwood lumber marketplace is going to be a good avenue, I think, for some of that kind of stuff. And I think more guys need to start bringing in some dimensional lumber, adding it to their inventory. And I've seen some customers that have been successful with just reselling. They'll get a relationship with a hardwood distributor. Once they have a shop space set up, they'll have their live edge slabs and their custom lumber, but they'll also have some dimensional lumber, and that starts bringing in more contractors and getting a different type of customer. And I think, and another thing that I've noticed is there's this thing called the hardwood lumber. What do they call it? It's like the market report, where this lady or ladies will call around to multiple large retailers and say, hey, what are you selling this lumber for? What are you selling this lumber for? And they'll keep a graph of like what the market is doing. I do think that us in this smaller lumber place need to start thinking about how the economy affects lumber prices also. Like, we may have been getting 18 bucks a board foot for walnut back in the pandemic time, but right, maybe we need to start adjusting with the economy a little bit and then thinking of it from that perspective. It would be cool if there was something that maybe iDRY could look at it, or somebody, but call around different guys and see, hey, what are you selling this stuff at? And then that way it just gives you a barometer of where we need to be price wise to keep moving stuff and to be viable in this lumber place. So
yeah. Well, it's interesting you brought up the dimensional, because, I know there's a huge slab market, and people want this and that. And I think one of the hardest things, is trying to figure out, I forget who said it, but it's like, you can saw what you want to saw all day long.
yeah,
But at the end of the day, if you're trying to make money, you got to saw what sells.
yeah,
And so there's a gentleman, he's about 10 minutes from me. All he does is slabs, huge 12, 16 footers, 2, 3 inches thick. And I just said, you know what? He's doing that. I'm going to do my mill. It only has a 28-inch throat, so I can only handle so much anyways. And it's easier for me as a one-man band to just handle dimensional lumber. And after seeing, the place in Knoxville, that's what I was like, all right, the light bulb went off. Like, you can sell the snot out of this stuff. And it's way easier. People buy 400 or 500 board feet of that at a time versus 1 or 2 slabs. And it's like, so what I've actually found too, on the sawmill side, I also offer mobile milling. So that's been good too. And then with that, then you can capture the audience of, hey, I have a kiln. We're not that far from each other. We can sticker and stack this stuff on your site, because air drying's free. When it gets closer down to that 20-25%, bring it to me. We'll throw it in the kiln, and then you're on your way. So the other piece too, is poplar. Being down here in the South, yellow poplar is everywhere. I mean, it's like a weed tree. It's like pine up north. And people use it for barns. They use it for fencing, whatever. It's because it's technically a hardwood, and it's cheap. It's affordable. So, I mean, I have one guy, he bought, in the last like 2 weeks, he's bought 100 something 1x10x10s from me, and
yeah,
it's easy. Saw, you can just hanging out he goes. And he's like, he was very happy with it. It's like, I'll be back for more. So
yeah,
whereas somebody with a slab, they're generally buying it, they're building a table or something, they might just be a one and done. Whereas if it's a lumber, a contractor, hey, I need 1,000 board feet of 1x6 poplar for interior trim, there you go. If you're putting out a product and they come, they're gonna find you. So
sell what people want. And you're right. I go to these trade shows and I talk to guys all the time, and they're like, your kiln's not big enough. I got a slab that's 80 inches wide and 22 feet long. And I'm like, well, have you ever sold a slab that big? No, but it's worth a lot of money. I'm like thinking to myself, it's worth a lot of money if it's dry. And what type of customer is going to buy a slab that big? It's probably going to be a corporation and they're going to pay a lot of money. And then you're going to sell for thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And then they're going to expect it not to move once it's in their shop. And are you going to take, so they have this pipe dream of, oh my God, these huge slabs, but your demographic for huge slabs is much, much, much lower than your demographic for other lumber. And I even say, if you have thinner wood, they sell these kits at Home Depot, which are completely trash, but they'll do two straight edges, they'll do two boards, they'll rip them down, and they'll do two live edge boards, and they'll have dominoes all ready to go, and you put them together. The average person who just wants a real table, they don't, between one piece of wood that's $10,000 or this tabletop that they put together with real wood that's several hundred. Like, I feel like if you can meet your customer where they're at and just have different price points, you just increase the amount of people that are going to buy your product, and dimensional lumber is key to that.
Well, and it's funny too, because I found that walnut slabs in like the 5 to 6 foot length and roughly 12 to 16 inches wide, and then anywhere from 1.25 to 2 inches thick.
Yep.
Hotcakes.
Yeah.
They had a whole bunch and they are gone. Now
Yep.
I'm just kind of left with like the weird, like, banana shaped stuff that's left. But yeah, that stuff moves pretty good. So, and then
Well,
the other pieces, go ahead.
I was just going to say those smaller pieces like that. Anybody like me, I made a desk. I had a piece of walnut that was like 20 inches by 6 feet. And I'm not I'm not a builder, I'm not a furniture maker, but I went and got some sandpaper and a palm sander at what's that place with the Harbor Freight? And one weekend I just went to town going through the different grits, and then I screwed some legs onto it, and like I got a nice little desk. Whereas like I'm a novice. I don't dare. I'm not gonna be like build a mold to put epoxy in and stuff like that. So I feel like those sizes that you mentioned are just approachable for normal guys who want to do a little project. And
Well, and it's cool too. Like I've had a couple folks, like spalted wood, and I work with a couple different tree guys. So I'm not dealing with loggers because I don't have a laydown yard where I can put 3,000 board feet of logs.
yeah,
So I'm just subject to whatever I can get. And so what I've started doing, what would normally just be junk firewood, they're smaller crotch pieces, they're only 4 to 6 feet long. I'm not gonna lie, it's more of a pain in the neck to saw them just because they're shorter. It's more labor intensive. But instead of like laying the crotch flat, you just lay it vertical. And yes, you're losing some, but then you get some of the smaller pieces that are just crazy figure from those, the crotch figure and the compression in there. So you're still getting that figure, and then you're getting, I call them figured shorts. So I mean, I have a whole stack, like 4 foot pieces of walnut. Some of them I got book match pieces that are just, I mean, some of the most crazy figure you'd ever see, but they're not huge pieces, but you can make little coffee tables or whatever.
Charcuterie boards, coffee tables, art for your wall. There's so many opportunities with those little pieces like that.
Exactly. And then, I mean, also, I have some cherry that came locally from about a mile down the road. It was a top that broke out because in a storm, it was all termite damage. And I've had a couple of guys be like, that's a great piece. Because one of my customers, he actually takes it. He said, I asked him, I said, well, what do you do with this piece? Because it's kind of weird shaped and everything. And he's a bowl turner. So he said, and I mean, it has all sorts of rot and everything, termite damage. And so he'll take it into smaller chunks, glue it together, fill the whole thing with epoxy, then put it on the lathe and get some crazy bowl. And I mean, stuff like that, because I'm not a turner. It's something I'd like to do, but my brain doesn't go to that capacity. I just don't think of stuff like that. And so after he said it, I was like, huh, all right. So some of this other stuff that I have that I would have, just cut up for firewood, I'm like, well, not that I'm a hoarder, but I was like, I'll keep it and see if
Yeah.
it sells. So, and then
I see
especially if
stuff. I see stuff like that all the time, like those short figured pieces. I've seen guys just make clocks out of them. They'll buy a clock kit, and uh there's just so much stuff that if people are creative out there and artistic, they can and that's approachable stuff. I've seen also guys out there who have shops. They'll do like like they do paint and sips and stuff like that.
yeah,
They have like an epoxy pour and sip, or they'll make charcuterie boards. Well, you come in, you buy they have a section of shorts. Maybe it comes with the class. They teach you how to sand it down and maybe turn it into a charcuterie board with some epoxy. You come back and get it later. But I think that's a great idea because it gets people like, oh my God, I made this and it's really cool. And really, it's just you're using a cool piece of wood with simple techniques. And then maybe the next project they do is a little bit bigger. Maybe it's a entryway table or something like that. So
yeah.
yeah,
I think Nick with Maverick out there in Portland, Oregon, does something like
he
that.
does. Yeah, yeah,
Better name that comes in, and I've seen it on Instagram quite a few times. And I would like to do that here. I just don't have the space. I
yeah.
mean, the shop's like a shoebox, so I could literally only fit
Yeah.
like two people in there. But
But for that shared space that you're talking about, and that's a cool idea. You get three similar type guys together. It lowers the board burden for everybody, and it becomes like this community space. I think more of that should happen. I'm a big fan of like the bartering system and getting together and
oh
community
yeah.
stuff like that. So
Well, and it's cool. Like up in Knoxville, there's a place called Able Trade, and there's a guy that started it. And when I first heard about it, I was like, that's a genius idea. I can only imagine what his insurance coverage is, but it's an old warehouse. And what he did was, I mean, the whole thing is has every industrial tool ever. And I think he's now branched out to like a metal shop and a couple other components. But the whole idea behind it is, there's a communal space with all the tools, and then he's got different size studios. For argument's sake, we'll just say one's like a 12 by 15, and then the other's like a 20 by 40, something like that. And you rent that space, so you pay like a monthly membership to use the tools, and then I can't remember the exact pricing structure, but then you also can have your studio space there. So you can use it, two different components. You can, if you're, Joe off the street and say, hey, I have the wood, but I don't have the tools. I have the know-how, or I want to learn how to make, a cutting board. You can bring your material there, use all the tools, build it right there, and then bring it home. So then you don't have the tools here, or, you can have the studio and build your own stuff and then have your own studio out of that same space.
where
So
people can come and shop. That's awesome. And I think we've got to start thinking like that more as like main streets and malls and stuff start closing down with these large spaces that smaller shops are never going to fill. Of course, that's from online shopping and stuff. But yeah, I think we should start looking at spaces like that. That would be really awesome.
yeah, it's a genius idea, I think. And then it just brings in a whole other component, of
Local
education.
artisan, all the stuff we like. Hello, everyone. This is Paul. Another episode of Whiskey and Wood. We're sitting down with Evan Bassarab in Tennessee, Mountain Man Timberworks, iDRY kiln owner and new business. He started it during the pandemic, and we're going to talk about his trials and tribulations and how it's going. And I got Jameson whiskey today,
Got a little bit of bullet bourbon here and
bullet
a
bourbon.
holiday glass.
Nice. The holidays are coming faster than we like, but yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Um, yeah, so man, it is like the slowest, like 2/3 of the business in the country right now are hurting. And we aren't going gangbusters. We're clawing and scratching, and um, I think after this election, I think no matter who wins, both people are like, housing's a major concern. And once housing picks back up, and you're going to be poised to like, if you're doing the poplar stuff, which is smart, and if you have some contractor type materials, have you thought about getting a molded planer and making like some baseboard and stuff and having it?
Well, yeah, so pretty cool story actually. What I think is, and just a testament to the iDRY. And it goes back to I'm still learning, but this guy brought me, there's a whole stack of walnut that was I actually went to his place up in Knoxville and checked it out. It was laying out uncovered on a concrete slab, not stickered or stacked, just a mess. And I was like, honestly, dude, like, kind of a waste of time. Like, I believe in transparency and being honest with people, and I'll let you know. Like, I, like this gentleman that's been bringing me wood, he has his own DH kiln or solar kiln. We put the moisture meter on it. He brought it to me, and it was already below 10%. And I said, dude, I said, I really appreciate it, but in all reality, you're wasting your time and money because this stuff is already dry. I mean, I'm happy to put it in for you. I will cook it. It'll kill any of the bugs. But in terms of like trying to get any more moisture out of it, we'll be able to get some. But so all that to say, this other customer with the walnut, he brought it to me, and it was, I think, the Thursday when that Hurricane Helene came in. I mean, it was pouring rain out. This stuff was soaking wet. Random size beams, like 4x7s, whatever, and a whole bunch of 1-inch boards that had, I mean, they were just cupped and bowed, you name it. And I said, all right, well, we'll see, so what we ended up doing is I stacked all the 1-inch funky stuff on the bottom, put all those beams on top. Then I had some of my own material, cooked it for I think a week, and those boards came out, I mean, punny, flat as a board. I mean, they were just, so as the moisture was coming out, they laid flat, and I mean, it was great. So very, very happy. So I mean, a testament to that, to the iDRY, and
Yeah.
It's just a cool machine. I love using it.
Yeah,
And
I think from a scientific standpoint or whatever, a physic, what happened is it's a really high humidity environment in the iDRY. That's what vacuum does, and that moisture probably relaxed the outside of the wood and allowed it to flatten out. It's the same concept with like large drying operations where like they'll dry it too much almost and start getting some movement, and then they'll blast it with steam to relax it. So yeah, I think that's probably what happened, which is cool. I love hearing those stories. That's super versatile. And of course, you haven't dried with anything else, but getting those boards to straighten out, or drying a load with beams and that type of wood is unheard of in any other type of system. So
yeah, and I mean, those were, I have the Wagner surface meter pinless, and then I also have the Delmhorst pin meter. And I mean, the only reason, I was like okay with drying the beams, because he said that was cut 6 years ago, and I said, all right, well, we'll see.
Yeah.
And I mean, I put the moisture meter in it before and after, and I mean, it was in the teens. And I told him, I said, realistically, we'll get as dry as we can in this time slot, because usually what I've found too, it's, I've been messing around with the pricing a little bit too, just to try and capture, because I think it's maybe a touch too high. But you lay it out for somebody like, all right, it's going to be this long for this many days, and so it's whether they're on budget or whatever, they say, oh, well. So, and then everybody's different. I had a builder, he's like, I only want my stuff down to like 18%, because that's what the relative humidity is in the air, and it's everybody's different. So
that's
it's
what
just
they want. We'll do
every
it.
year. I said, I'll dry it whatever you want,
Yeah.
So, but it's going to cost you money. So
Cool. So moral of the story is your new business, you're getting busier, you're using our marketing.
Yeah.
You've got starting to get some good repeat customers. We just got to keep plugging away, and things going to open up. The housing boom is coming, and with the housing boom, lumber sales flourish. We experienced it in COVID. It's going to come back. So you're going to be in a good position. You've got dimensional, you've got slabs.
Mhm.
It's going to be good.
Well, and the other thing, I know we're a little out of order, but I'll touch on, people asking, well, where does Mountain Man come from? And so, being I went to college in Vermont, in Pulteney there in Killington, I'd carry a backpack with all my books in it. And so one day, one of my buddies, he just started calling me Mountain Man. And so it just kind of stuck. And that was my nickname all through college. And
That's
so
funny.
I just thought, and I had a friend of mine make a logo, and it's pretty. It's got the mountains with a crosscut saw. It says Mountain Man Timberworks. And so I just thought Timberworks, kind of encompasses, I'm not a timber framer, but it,
Yeah.
lumber as a whole. So it kind of stuck. So
Do you have any merchandise, t-shirts, hats, or anything like that yet?
I don't, not at the moment. It's on the list of stuff to do.
Yeah, add it to the list. I want to start selling everybody who's done a whiskey and wood. I want to do a merchandise store, and we can buy, because everybody's got cool logos and like names of these small lumber businesses. Like I did Oddwood Lumber. They've got an owl with crazy eyes because it's Odd Wood Lumber, the acronym. Um, but it would be cool. I've seen companies that do like dive bars around the country, and they have the shirts of all the dive bars. So it'd be cool to have small woodworking operations for, yeah,
For sure.
that'd be the plan. So cool. All right, man. Well, hey, thanks for doing this with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.